Hi, this is Emma from Arise, and I'm here to tell you about and to welcome you to our new podcast at Arise Home Education. This is going to be a place where home educators can be encouraged, where you can be informed of great resources, where we hope to give you practical ideas and tips and advice for every stage of your home ed journey. We're going to be having guests. We're going to have in the next coming weeks. We'll be featuring our tutors at Arise Home Education. We'll also be having other guests who will come along and speak to you about areas that they are passionate about or where they have a particular expertise. In the next couple of weeks, look out for a podcast where I interview Claire Rogerson. Many of you will be familiar with Claire if you live in the Central Belt. She's a well-known figure in the home ed community. She is absolutely lovely. She is a great encourager, a great networker. She loves bringing home educators together and creating that space for community. She's going to be talking about creative ways to home educate when you have young children. And that's she's just lovely. I think you'll all love Claire. We will also be discussing more spiritual aspects of home education. Coming up, I'm going to be doing a podcast on prayer as a home educator and both the creative ways to facilitate prayer as a home ed mom, because we know that can be really difficult when you're surrounded by young children. And we're also going to be discussing some of the more political and topical points that are affecting home educators and Christians in the UK and in Scotland. So I hope this will be a blessing to you. If you really want to see anything featured in this podcast, please put that in the comments and please subscribe. Thank you. Hi everyone, we are back here today with Shannan again, who's going to talk to us more about geography. And today we're going to talk more about geography in high school. So Shannan, can you begin by telling us how travel in education and geography has enriched your own teens?
So, first, there's a lot of different aspects to it. And so I'm going to touch on a couple different things here. In general, there has been an enormous amount of life skills learned, both practical, like, learning train schedules and bus schedules and how to pack and not take the world with you because it costs more to take the world with you on the airplane than just the few things. And so life skills, as well as critical thinking skills. And that kind of goes into the life skills piece as well, but it ends up playing out. You see it end up playing out in other subjects and other scenarios throughout life as they're growing up and pulling more pieces of the puzzle together. And then, so those I think are the two main ones. And helping, I think the other piece that's more, it's more on perhaps an emotional or spiritual level, is helping them understand where they fit in the world, and even in the geography of their town or their community, their friends, how does that piece then drive them to a career path that might take them long distances away, and again might not. But as they're navigating those pieces, geography becomes one of those foundational tools, again, like we said before, that lays the foundation of what life plays out on. And, there's so many analogies that have to do with geography and journeys and, mountains to climb and, rivers to cross, and we could go biblical and talk about the Red Sea, and we could talk about Mount Zion and all these different places and things that can inspire geography at a spiritual level, but also at that level of just learning to navigate life and and find it fulfilling and find it enjoyable and find places for it. And that might not seem like it connects well together, but it really does. When you see it when you look back on how did we get here, when you're looking at your older teens and you're going, how did we get here? And you look back and you see the instances in their lives. I know I can point some of those things to travel, and how that has really inspired them. So I will tell you a little story about one of our adventures. If you know me at all, and by this second episode here, you'll know I will probably have talked about Italy several times. It is one of my favorite places. And interestingly enough, when I worked in the States, I worked for a missions organization in the States that trained and helped short-term missionaries prepare for the field to work with the people they were going to go and help. And in working with them, I came upon this statistic that said that the first country that people minister in is the country that they will continue an ongoing affinity, often move to, continue to go back to over and over again, and that type of thing. And ironically, for me, that is the complete truth. What were the first two places I went? England and Scotland, and then Italy within 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah. And here I am. Now I'm in Scotland, and I've been to Italy a number of times for ministry, and then also just for delight and education and pleasure and enjoyment and those kind of things. But one of the trips just a few years ago, we had opportunity to minister with the group of people that my husband and I ministered with, where we caught that vision I talked about in episode 1, where we had that yearning of wanting to raise our family in Europe. That's where that started with those initial trips. So we had an opportunity to go as a family and minister with them again. So it's like second generation, all these first generation people that had gone were coming back now, and we were ministering together along with our kids and having a really good time doing it. And that trip, the beginning of that trip, had some amazing life skills that happened. We were in Italy. We were just outside of Rome. So we didn't stay in Rome proper, but we stayed in one of the hill towns outside of Rome. And there was a couple guys at the shopping carts at the local grocery store, the food mart thing, and they were playing scams on people and trying to create incidents, that was going to cause a problem. Either they were going to try to steal something, or they were going to something. You could tell that was just happening. And I was keeping my eye on them and noticed what they were doing. And it originally started out first thing in the morning, and we had gone in to get breakfast things because we'd come in the night before. And we went in, got our breakfast things, came out, and we were eating them really quick, and I didn't want to get croissant crumbs in the car because it was a rental car and the whole thing. And so we were just kind of standing there munching on our croissants and having, I don't know, juice or something. And a local guy pulls up, and I'd noticed the scammer guys down by the shopping carts. And a local Italian, an older gentleman, came up, and he looks at me, and he pulls on his eye, just below his eye, and looks at me and says, Male. And then he points over to these gentlemen I'm doing those air quotes with that are down by the shopping carts, and basically letting me know that these guys are no good and that we really need to be moving on. And I had recognized that, but because the local said so, he's like, yeah, you know what, time to go. So we packed up, we ate our croissants in the car, we got croissant crumbs all over the car, no big deal. And the kids were, my youngest at that time was a little bit of like, he didn't quite understand. Here I was changing the instructions, and then I was just told him, no, we're not eating in the car. And now I'm saying, hurry up, get in the car, take your croissant. I don't care. And off we go. And but they did it. And we went on about our day. And that was kind of just, a lesson of, you need to be observant, right? That was the life lesson that morning, is you need to be aware of your surroundings. And the other life lesson there is, if a local in that type of situation, if a local says something like that, the way they did, they're showing care for you, and you need to take that to heart, and and internalize it and decide, do I need to act on this, or do I need to let it go? And so learning those skills. So we went on about our day. We had a great day out. We saw some most beautiful things. And we came back around at the end of the day to the same shopping area, to the same grocery store, to pick up things for dinner, to go home. Lo and behold, guess who's there? Yes, it's the same scam guys, still there with a whole new scam, because now it's dark, or nearly dark. And they are trying to run carts into cars, and then claim damage, or walking out in front of cars, or all kinds of crazy things.
Wow.
And my son he sees what's happening and cannot believe they're still there, and the whole thing. And it makes him realize again that to listen to those pieces, those life skills of being aware of your surroundings, being mindful and careful, and listening to the people around you, and being willing to obey even if you don't understand, which was the whole croissants in the car thing. So that happened in a really small way, but that was the building block of an even bigger lesson that happened a few days later into the trip. I think it was the next day, where we actually saw a drug deal go down on the train going from Rome to Naples. And I won't go into the whole gory details of it, but this story was so impactful for all of us about how to work as a team, how to do as you're asked, even if you don't understand, from someone you trust and you know that they have your best interest at heart. And then how to at the same time just enjoy the culture and have fun, and just be amazed at how different cultures and different countries do things really differently, and not judge it, but enjoy it. And so that's just a small way of how travel has impacted education in our family. And just one of the simple stories. There's also those about enriching friendships, and learning about a location, and then actually being there, and the wow factor of experiencing those different kinds of things. But that's just, like we said in episode 1, I hope everybody gets to listen to it too, is how it connects our senses and our memories to memorable things, whether it's the life skills and the story of those, the scenarios playing out there for the life skills, or it's the geographical location that allows us to learn and remember about the environment, or the landscape, or the historical memories, or the historical events that happened in the locations. It pulls it together. And travel does that in such an impactful way. And so that's what makes it fun. And that's how, as you're going into the teen years, it gives you those type of things, give you more a richness of things to talk about when you start talking about, modern politics or the different things. You're able to say, well, remember when we went, and we went to, in this situation, we went to Rome, right? Well, understand Rome was the founding democracy, and so many other governments are built on it. And remember when we saw it, and it ties it together, and it allows you to, whether that's local or distant, big adventures like Italy or other places, or even the local ones, It just really brings that richness to it.
So, Shannan, you're going to be teaching world geography with us at Arise starting in August. Can you tell us a little bit about your class?
I would love to tell you about my class. So my class is built to allow those type of experiences that I just talked about, and just experiences of a learning about more than 250 countries in,
Wow.
yeah, in 36. We do 30 weeks. There's 36 weeks of lessons, so there's a few extra credit lessons in there, and those that finish all the projects and all of those 36 lessons and are doing well with that, that's where they can add, if they're doing the US transcript, then they can add that as an honors class. If they're doing just the 30 weeks basic, then that's kind of the general, but it's really scalable depending on the student and their aspirations. So we start in Africa, and we spend a lot of time in Africa because Africa is enormous, and it is really, it's so rich, both in, it's so much more than just desert. Everybody thinks it's just deserts, right? So much more to it than that. So we look at all the countries of Africa, and we look at, in the weekly lessons, they look at every country throughout the course of the school year. And then that's in the homework. And then in our live lessons, we look at culture, we do virtual tours, we do 360 tours, we do Google Earth tours, we do mapping, we learn about the region, we learn about the features, the physical features. We memorize, they work at memorizing and labeling maps for each of the countries, and then the major physical features in a continent. And so we start in Africa, and then we move to Asia, and then we move. So that's the first semester, is Africa and Asia. And then in the second semester, we do Europe and the Americas. And then in there, at least in Europe and the Americas, we throw in, as part of the extra credit, is Australia and the Southern Hemisphere, because we can't cover everybody, but it's all there to do. And we do touch a little bit in the live classes on those other continents and countries that we don't spend so much deep time on, because we spend and the reason is because I want kids to understand and learn about that which they're not already familiar with. And so that's why we start with Africa, and because it's first in the alphabet. And we start with Africa, and then we move to Asia, and then that gives them really rich comparisons to places that they're more familiar with. And we look at the historical high points of those places along with the geography. So we understand the geography, and then we lay the history and the important people, times and events on top of it in a really not a deep dive way on the history. It's just to be able to say, now remember, when we're talking about South Africa, we have to talk about apartheid. You cannot talk about South Africa without talking about that. When we talk about Asia, we have to talk about missionaries to Asia, or the Silk Road, or other things that are important, that are really indicative of what makes Asia Asia, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a big nutshell, but that's the nutshell of it.
So you referenced there about discussing missionaries. So do you discuss missionaries in all the different regions?
I try to, for each continent, I try to, when we're talking about Africa, we do a lesson on David Livingstone. When we are talking about Asia, I'm trying to remember who we do. I can't think of it off the top of my head. When we talk about Europe, we do Martin Luther. And when we talk about, I think with Asia, we do Paul as one of the main projects. And I think that must be within Europe because that's through the whole. Because it's Middle East and it's Europe there. I forget which section it is because Middle East is really part of Asia, Asia Minor, and so it connects in there somewhere. But they have the choice of doing a movement project where they can choose to read through Acts or do a documentary video that I have found about that takes them through Acts and Paul's journeys, or they can choose from some of the other ones, and it has to do with ages. So it's like, Marco Polo, or there might be Magellan in there and a voyage expedition type thing, and that kind of thing. So that comes in with some of the projects. And then when we get to the Americas, I am fading on what we do that might be missionary oriented for the Americas at the moment. Because I'll be honest, when I've been teaching this in the past, it's been with Americans. And so we spend very little time on the US. And so we look far more at the rest of the Americas than just the US, because they do in the States, they do a whole year of that, and they don't need to do that in my class.
Yeah.
So we cover it all, and we do cover missionaries, and we do cover current events. That's the other place where sometimes some of the students in their project for their current event project do a modern missionary, and they will look at a modern missionary because of the current events around them, whether there's certain persecution things going on, or maybe they look at Bible translation in countries or things like that. So we weave a curriculum that is really rich and allows them to see where God moves as well through it in a really gentle way, but inquisitive way, to allow them to see the geography as the focus, but recognize everything, absolutely everything happens on top of it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That sounds amazing.
It's so fun. I really, I just love it. I really
You
do
love
love
it. I
teaching.
know you. I've known Shannan for a long time, and Shannan is passionate about this subject. This is
it's true.
such a love of hers. You alluded to extra credit,
I did.
which for us Brits is like another language.
Okay.
Which brings us into this whole idea of high school transcripts, and this class can be used for high school transcript. Can you explain a little bit how that would work?
Yeah. So if your family is choosing to follow the U.S. high school diploma and transcript model, this class will give you a full credit of social studies at the high school level. The rigor of it is scalable. So if you're really passionate and need honors credit for geography, you could do that with this class. It's not going to be the same type of work that we were talking about. I think we were talking about it in the first session together, about like the AP courses, like a world geography AP course, because that is very much going to be about statistics and maps and surveys and population growth and, physical geography, but more human geography. It's really more human geography than physical geography. So it's not like that. That would be a much higher level that you would take as, 11th or 12th grader, which would be S5 or 6 here, if you were going to choose the AP course. My course is a great beginning course for that, prior to that, if you're really looking at geography. But because of the 36 weeks, it meets the requirements for a U.S. honors course. All right. So the distinction there is that it's not an AP approved coursework. Okay. So it can't be taken for AP credit. There is no AP exam. That's completely different, managed by the people that own and run advanced placement. So my course is a general world geography course, but it is so rich that it will allow the student to better understand so many things: science, literature, history, current events. If they want to go on into higher geography and political science and those kind of things that deal with geography, then it's a great foundational piece. And it is just the 1 year, but it meets the requirements for social studies and meets, if you have a younger student, it meets a great S1, S2. I would say S2, 3 if you have a younger student. S1, it's going to be a little too rigorous for them still, I think. But to be able to get their feet wet and explore and say, is geography for me? Is this something I really am going to enjoy and I want to pursue it as a career path?
It's also a great class for people who are really looking to build a their homeschool year on Christian classes.
Yeah.
We've learned about how the missionaries and also the current affairs, and really seeing how God moves on this world scale. And we hear so often we hear parents really looking for those Christian classes for their teens, and it's harder to find Christian curriculum for teenagers because we're off, especially in the UK, where if you're going down the UK exam route, it's basically that's out, because you have to do the UK exam stuff, which is very not Christian. Whereas this is a high school class that has a heavy Christian worldview behind it, and it's relevant, but also has that historical element to it. So you get that sweeping view of seeing how God has moved in the nations. And it sounds like a fantastic class for kids who might be interested in missions as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had in a previous class, I taught one young lady who was really passionate for Africa. Everything she did for her projects was for Africa. And the more I got to know her, and over the course of the year, you really do get to know the students and what really makes them tick within your classes and that kind of thing. And it was like, you know what? It would not surprise me if she ends up a missionary there, or at least goes for some type of short-term trip or something like that, because she was ready for it, and she thoroughly loved learning about all the countries, but everything came back to Africa for her.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So everything you've spoken about kind of points to the benefits of studying geography, but is there any key pieces that you would like listeners to take away from this as the benefits for bringing geography into your teenagers' homeschooling?
I think it allows for better dialogue and discussion in other subjects. And it allows our kids to become aware of the world around them. And like I said at the beginning, and their place in that, and their value as God has created them within the whole worldview and his plan for that. And so that's huge. That's huge. As our kids are trying to figure out a career path and understanding who God made them to be, and what does God want them to do and become, and how are they important in the big scheme of things in the world, to see that they are important and that they can make a difference, and that learning about these other places is going to allow them to make a difference by helping them figure out a career path, or helping them understand the plight of another country, or watch the news and really recognize, you know what, that's not correct, or that is correct. And that's really important, and we need to pay attention. Or it creates an ability to critically think as well. Because, like I said earlier, once you understand the geography, when there is a current event that happens, whether it's historic, it can't be a historical and a current event at the same time. So that's not right. So if you're looking at historical events, you can see, if you understand, why was the crossing of the Rubicon such a big deal? Well, when you go and you understand the geography and you map the journey that was taken from Africa, somehow from Africa, up and over and crossing the Rubicon, you realize, oh my heavens, that was amazing. Why? Because of the geography.
We also
So,
find out why the historical event might have triggered the current event.
exactly. And when you understand the economies and the governments, even just at a basic level, and you understand, well, why is it called the breadbasket? Well, it's because it's all plains and it's all agriculture. Well, why is that important? Because that means an army can sweep right through really quickly. They don't have a mountain to climb, and it's completely open. Different things like that allows you to understand how conflict takes place. When you begin understanding the resources in certain countries, you will begin to understand the selfishness of the world and the conflict that comes because of natural resources and that type of thing. So it really, at the high school level, it kind of blows their mind when you start helping them realize the other pieces and how it plays out. And it really, it's exciting to see the light go on and for them to realize, oh, okay, maybe I think differently about this now, or this idea that I had, or, that type of thing. So yeah, so it's the benefits, they're outnumbered. There's the life skills, there's from travel, there's the geography of just knowing places, and being able to be a good conversationalist about anything, because you know the place that they're talking about and that kind of thing. And then being able to critically think and help problem solve conflict, and think about solutions, to be compassionate about your God-given abilities and how to use them in other places. I could go on, but again, we're getting close to running out of time. So
Well, that was fantastic. We'll put all the details in the show description, and check out Shannan's class. It is absolutely brilliant. Shannan has been teaching us for years. It's a great place to learn world geography, especially from that Christian worldview. Thank you, Shannan.
thanks so much, Emma.
Hopefully see you soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
Hi, this is Emma from Arise, and I'm here to tell you about and to welcome you to our new podcast at Arise Home Education. This is going to be a place where home educators can be encouraged, where you can be informed of great resources, where we hope to give you practical ideas and tips and advice for every stage of your home ed journey. We're going to be having guests. We're going to have, in the next coming weeks, we'll be featuring our tutors at Arise Home Education. We'll also be having other guests who will come along and speak to you about areas that they are passionate about or where they have a particular expertise. In the next couple of weeks, look out for a podcast where I interview Claire Rogerson. Many of you will be familiar with Claire if you live in the Central Belt. She's a well-known figure in the home ed community. She is absolutely lovely. She is a great encourager, a great networker. She loves bringing home educators together and creating that space for community. She's going to be talking about creative ways to home educate when you have young children. And that's she's just lovely. I think you'll all love Claire. We will also be discussing more spiritual aspects of home education. Coming up, I'm going to be doing a podcast on prayer as a home educator, and both the need creative ways to facilitate prayer as a home ed mum, because we know that can be really difficult when you're surrounded by young children. And we're also going to be discussing some of the more political and topical points that are affecting home educators and Christians in the UK and in Scotland. So I hope this will be a blessing to you. If you really want to see anything featured in this podcast, please put that in the comments, and please subscribe. Thank you.